It is a pleasure to meet you at this opportunity to mention a few things important got my attention. Starts with the comments of the former Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan and the present Chairman of the Federal Reserve, Mr. Bernanke. Their comments on the every month $85 billion on repurchase of the in the financial market without specifying the area. The former chairman recommended the continuation of the $85 billion every month repurchase. And it does remind me with the two cycles, the securities cycle, which start with the resources, which starts with the collateralized fund obligation, then it turns to collateralized debt obligations, and the after that it gets to the what circulated or what deals with the assets-backed security, which comes to with growth. If there is any merger and acquisition, or if there is any less growth, it comes to a repurchase agreement. When the repurchase agreement, the Federal Reserve gets involved, and they repurchase the assets on less value. And it does remind the it reminds me with the FDIC takeover financial institutions since year 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, and 2012, and the 2013. Why it happens? Not supposed to happen, but it did happen. There is a very, very important point needs to be addressed. The monetary stimulus didn't work as supposed to, or it doesn't work as supposed to, or as planned to. When the government entered to offer more liquidity, their objective is to increase economic activities. Good. Why it doesn't happen? Since late 2007 to present moment, the national debt of the United States increased $14 trillion. It's impossible, with my full respect, to their owner, the financial authorities, Federal Reserve Districts, and the Treasury Department, and their owner, Congress, Senate, and House of Representatives related committees. What's supposed to happen? An increase on economic activities, which brings more growth on gross domestic product. It didn't happen. Gross domestic product remained on, it is 15.6, between 15.4, 15.6 trillion dollars, but the national debt increased about $14 trillion in less than 6 years. It does include the minimum debt interest. Why it happened? Why FDIC take over financial institutions happen? Which means less economic activities, less contracts and contracting. Well, it gets to another important part, and before I refer to the other part, the investment position. Investment position continue on negative growth since late 1989 to present moment. Number of indicators supposed to turn to become positive with growth, with any monetary stimulus, if it's a planned economy or it's an administrative economy. It doesn't matter, it's supposed to work, but the problem here, which guides to the grounds of solution, and I remind, is a 6% on gross solutions, total gross amount, and if you remember, I refer to 6 but there is a list of gross amount. $26 trillion in 24 hours, growth in 24 hours in the financial industry, $200 trillion on industrial development, and I hope their honor Congress starts to think about the industrial development division, and it does connect them to a number of things not aware about it as supposed to. What does merger and acquisitions means when it happens on a derivative industry? What does happen when it happens on main industry? What does it happen to those companies on the leading and mid-level and small companies? I think their honor, they need to get connected much closer. Similarly, it's applied with the Federal Reserve and Treasury Department before their honor. As I remember, the Federal Reserve, they have the stress test, and I referred to growth test. An obligation is needed to examine growth and find huge. Most of the limitations, it gets back to the financial authorities. There is a limitations. They're supposed to get much closer to it. Anytime available to explain it in full details, and let me just connect to the similar ground to what I mentioned earlier and to what I just mentioned, which is the financial markets needs more attention to be organized much better, and it does lead to huge growth you cannot even imagine, and it does connect to commodities markets. It needs to be organized. The commodity itself needs to be redefined, and it guides to huge growth. And if you remember, there is another $200 trillion concern financial markets and commodities markets in U.S. cities with more enhancement and more focus. It does lead to much of growth. It is just a brief reading and justification to their honor. The former chairman of the Federal Reserve and the present chairman of the Federal Reserve, their comments and their recommendation on the conference, most of the conferences, they address the continuation of the $85 billion every month repurchase. They need to focus on the how to enhance the financial markets, how to enhance the commodities markets, and find out why the investment position on negative growth since 1989 supposed to have the opposite direction, positive growth. Full details available. It does start with the inventory investment. Without getting to any details, I hope any of the list of solutions start to turn the direction. Total clearance to national debt, total clearance to federal budget deficit, and I remind the federal budget sequestration, it does put more pressure on the inventory investment, and it leads to more negative growth on investment position. Any of those negative indicators or negative impacts, it could be cleared in 24 hours. The $26 trillion growth in the financial industry, just the beginning. The Industrial Development Division in U.S. Congress, or the National Council of National Economic Council at the White House, or National Governors Association. It is important, and it is important in Congress. At least they become aware of much of things through more than 226 main and derivative industries. What does happen after any merger and acquisition takes places? Big companies, the small companies, mid-level companies, corporations. Any merger and acquisitions is supposed to lead to more growth to both sides, just to avoid the fluctuations, to keep things adjusted forward for forward growth. It is important to have the Industrial Development Division. Thank you very much, and I hope to meet you on another brief video message.